Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Is Matt to blame for Noah's Canyon crash's payback for Sienna's infidelity? It's possible that Matt Clark, also known as Mitch Bacall, sought retribution for Sienna Bacall's infidelity with Noah Newman. Did Matt cause the canyon collision that almost killed Noah? Nick Newman has been working hard to capture the true bond between Sienna and Noah. Nick has been aware of Sienna from the beginning since Noah had her name on his phone. We'll remember that when Sienna learned of Noah's crash, she was genuinely shocked. Since Sienna had only recently been with Noah, the news caught her off guard. Nick asked Sienna how much she liked his son during one of his interrogations. Sienna mentioned that although she is married, she hasn't been true to Mitch, also known as Matt. Given that Sienna and Mitch appear to be having relationship problems, it's possible that Sienna had an affair with Noah. Sienna seems to be objecting too much to having a personal relationship with Noah, even if it hasn't been anything too serious yet. It appears like Sienna is concealing the real nature of their relationship the more she minimizes the situation and yells that she wasn't out on a date with Noah on the night of the collision. Naturally, this does not imply that Sienna was in love with Noah, because if that were the case, she most likely would have reacted more strongly to his wounds. Sienna's fear that Mitch would have discovered the affair and taken revenge may have been the true cause of her unease. Even though Sienna isn't sure how to feel about all this Matt Clark stuff, she seems to recognize that Mitch is a dodgy guy. Mitch, sometimes known as Matt, is undoubtedly the type of man who would either run his wife's younger lover off the road or possibly carry out the act himself. Given that Noah is the son of Nick and Sharon Newman, this is particularly true. When Sienna started this affair without realizing the background, Matt might have already been pursuing Noah for retaliatory Newman-related motives. That would have increased Matt's motivation to go after Noah. To put it another way, it's possible that running Noah's car off the road was an attempt to get Sienna to pay for the affair while also upsetting Noah's parents. Mitch's remarks regarding Noah's depressing state and her lack of familiarity with him almost gave the impression that he was making fun of Sienna. There seems to be some mind games going on, and Matt is undoubtedly skilled at them. Holden confronts Mitch when Noah emerges from his coma. Nick stops by Sharon's room in Los Angeles to talk about how terrible it is to have Matt Clark back in their lives after all these years. Their son must have been Clark's aim, although it's difficult to see what he had in mind. In order to get some eyes on him, Nick is going to phone his father. In order to acquire some answers, he intends to surprise him at the club. Claire eats breakfast with Nikki and Victoria at the hotel, poking at an omelette while hiding her hangover eyes behind sunglasses. They question whether Claire regrets anything she did. Her headache is the only thing she regrets. Nikki questions whether she has learned anything while traveling. Claire acknowledges that she is more perplexed than ever, but she intends to enjoy the present. Additionally, it appears that it's time to return home. Nikki, Claire, Victoria. Holden appears, making fun of Claire's movie star appearance and inquiring about Noah. Nikki and Victoria announce they must return to the hospital, so they don't stay to talk. Holden worries that Claire has made the decision to leave town as a result of yesterday night's events when he is by himself. She tells him she doesn't regret anything. Her goal in going on this vacation was to gain some perspective. She can now return to her actual life since she has it. Holden questions whether he has a place in her new life. He doesn't mind that she hasn't made any decisions regarding any of that. Holden, Claire. Claire wants to visit Sienna to express her gratitude for her hospitality and view the mountains before she leaves. Holden surmises that she still has a fascination with Audra's history. Claire will acknowledge that she would prefer to have some ammunition for the upcoming altercation with that woman. Holden still thinks it's best to keep some skeletons in the closet. Why does Mitch ask Sienna questions? Mitch tells Sienna at the shadow room that he doesn't know why Nick and Sharon believe he is this Matt Clark guy. Sienna is also unable to comprehend it. They talk about how she doesn't call him, works late, and crashes in the office. She acknowledges that she is anxious because of all the inquiries around Noah. It's possible that he met someone at the club who attempted to murder him, which might link them to this disaster. If Noah doesn't survive, the entire situation will disappear, according to Mitch, who believes Sarah is overreacting. Sienna. Mitch. What takes place with Noah? Mitch is hoping that Noah will pass away, but when Sharon gets to her son's hospital room, she sees that he is fidgeting with his finger and gasps when his hand begins to twitch. Mom, he moans. When Sharon calls in the doctor, he tells her that this morning they started to ease her kid out of the coma. Noah asks his mother what transpired. She begs him to refrain from taxing himself. She needs to share the good news even if she doesn't want to let go of his hand. Noah. Sharon. Sharon can't stop crying as she rushes out the door and encounters Victoria and Nikki. She acknowledges that she was afraid this would be Cassie all over again. When the three of them walk into Noah's room, he declares his love for them. Sharon leaves to make calls while they fuss over him. When Noah asks Nikki about the crash, she tells him to get some rest and strengthen himself. How will Holden assist Claire in bidding farewell? Holden and Claire take a ton of pictures while admiring the beauty of the mountains from a rooftop before making their way inside the shadow room. He persuades her to hold off on asking inquiries concerning Audra for the time being. After entering, Claire expresses gratitude to Sienna for her hospitality. When Mitch shows there, he is introduced. He informs Claire that he knew Noah in London and is unconcerned with Holden. Novak acknowledges that Audra is inevitable in Genoa City when he expresses optimism that Holden would no longer have to deal with her, but he makes an effort. Mitch. Sienna. After Claire and Holden leave, Mitch tells Sienna that he doesn't understand why she's so tense given that she didn't spend much time with Noah. Holden confesses to Claire outside that he and Mitch are at odds. She feels as though something terrible occurred with Audra. Claire struggles with secrets and believes that if he can't be honest with her, their friendship won't last. Before he had a chance to speak, Nick shows up excited to see Mitch. He and Sharon have a lot of questions about him, and Claire can't help but notice. Holden. Claire. The twisted web of deception, lust, and vengeance continues to unravel in the Young and the Restless universe as Mitch Bacall, known to some as the presumed dead Matt Clark, becomes the prime suspect in Noah Newman's mysterious canyon crash. Could Mitch, hiding behind his new identity, have sought revenge against his wife Sienna Bacall for cheating with Noah? Or was his motive something far darker, a deeply personal vendetta against the Newman family that's been festering for decades? The moment Nick Newman learned that his son Noah had Sienna Bacall's number saved in his phone, something about it didn't sit right. Why would Noah, recently back from London and trying to rebuild his life, be in contact with a married woman like Sienna? The revelation immediately raised Nick's suspicions, especially since Sienna's husband, Mitch, had recently been revealed to have eerie similarities to Matt Clark, a man once presumed long dead, and one of Nick's most dangerous enemies. The affair that sparked a storm. In Los Angeles, whispers began to circulate about Noah and Sienna's late-night meetings. Though Sienna tried to dismiss them as harmless business discussions, her nervous glances and tense reactions told another story. It started innocently enough, late nights at the shadow room, drinks after closing, and conversations that stretched into the early hours. But emotional boundaries blurred, and before long, the chemistry between Noah and Sienna ignited into something reckless. Noah had been lonely, scarred from his breakup with Allie and feeling detached from the Newman family's constant power struggles. Sienna, on the other hand, felt neglected by her husband. Mitch's cold demeanor, his mysterious business dealings, and his vanishing acts had left her desperate for attention. Noah became that outlet, young, idealistic, and completely unaware that he was stepping into a trap that could destroy him. Though Sienna told herself it was just a flirtation, she couldn't deny how deeply Noah's kindness affected her. For once, she felt seen, appreciated, loved even. But as she became more entangled, paranoia set in. Mitch, she realized, always seemed to know more than he should. There were moments when his dark eyes lingered on her just a little too long, his smile too controlled, his words too deliberate. It was as if he knew, and was waiting for the perfect moment to make her pay. The canyon crash. On the night of the crash, Noah had been driving along the coastal canyon road, reportedly after leaving the shadow room. According to investigators, there were no brake marks, suggesting either brake failure or deliberate interference. Noah's car went over the guardrail and plunged into the ravine below. When paramedics arrived, he was barely alive. The police found no evidence of intoxication, but what they did find was far more chilling: a call to Sienna placed minutes before the crash. That call went unanswered. When Sienna received the news of the accident, she was visibly shaken, her hands trembling, her eyes wide with terror. But the fear wasn't just for Noah's safety. Deep down, she suspected the unthinkable: Mitch might have known about her affair, and this crash could be his doing. Nick picked up on her distress immediately. During his interrogation of Sienna, he pressed her hard about her friendship with Noah. Her defensiveness only made things worse. "I'm a married woman, Nick," Sienna snapped, avoiding his gaze. "You think I'd risk everything for a fling with your son?" But her trembling voice and flushed cheeks betrayed her guilt. Nick saw right through her denial. And when he brought up Mitch's name, and the whispers that Mitch might actually be Matt Clark, Sienna's face went pale. The ghost from Nick's past. Matt Clark's name sent a chill down Nick's spine. Decades ago, Matt had been the ultimate villain, a manipulator who framed Nick for rape, nearly destroyed Sharon's life, and later returned from the dead under different guises to torment them both. If Mitch Bacall was truly Matt Clark, it meant that a man Nick thought he'd buried long ago had risen from the ashes with a new face and a renewed thirst for revenge. Now, everything made sense: Mitch's sudden appearance in Los Angeles, his marriage to the enigmatic Sienna, his involvement with the Shadow Room, and his subtle interest in the Newman family. Nick began to piece together a horrifying theory: Mitch had found out about Sienna's affair with Noah and saw the perfect opportunity to kill two birds with one stone: punish his wife for her betrayal and take revenge on Nick by targeting his son. Sienna's guilt and fear. Sienna's world was collapsing. Every time she looked at Mitch, she saw flashes of the man she'd married: charming, sophisticated, worldly, but beneath that veneer, she could feel the sinister energy pulsing beneath his surface. His questions became sharper. His tone colder. "You were close to Noah, weren't you?" Mitch would ask, his voice deceptively calm. "You seemed awfully upset about the accident. Almost like you had something to do with it." Sienna tried to hold her ground, but her husband's mind games chipped away at her sanity. He'd show up at the hospital just to mention Noah's condition, as if savoring every painful update. "He might not make it," Mitch would whisper, almost with a smirk. "Tragic, isn't it? You didn't really know him that well anyway." Was that guilt in his voice? Or satisfaction? Sienna couldn't tell anymore. She began to wonder if Mitch had tampered with Noah's car himself, or had one of his shady associates do it. After all, Mitch had the resources, the brains, and the motive. And if he was Matt Clark, he certainly had the heartless determination to make sure his enemies suffered. Nick's fury and Sharon's heartbreak. Back in Genoa City, Sharon was barely holding it together. The sight of her son lying unconscious in the hospital bed brought back every traumatic memory of Cassie's death. She couldn't lose another child, not to some twisted act of revenge. Nick's anger burned like wildfire. He was determined to uncover the truth, even if it meant confronting Mitch head-on. "He's not Mitch Bacall," Nick muttered. "He's Matt Clark, and he's not going to destroy my family again." He vowed to protect Sharon, Noah, and everyone else he loved, but he knew Matt was always one step ahead. Noah wakes up. Then came the moment no one expected. Noah opened his eyes. Sharon was by his bedside when she felt his hand move. "Mom," he croaked weakly, his voice barely audible. It was the most beautiful word she'd ever heard. Tears streamed down her face as she called for the doctor. When Noah asked what happened, Sharon urged him not to push himself, but the questions wouldn't stop. Was it an accident?" he asked, his brow furrowing as fragments of memory flickered in his mind: headlights in the rearview mirror, a sudden jolt, the sound of tires screeching. Someone had been following him that night. He was sure of it. Holden and Claire's complicated involvement. Meanwhile, Claire and Holden found themselves caught in the periphery of the chaos. Over breakfast with Nikki and Victoria, Claire admitted she was feeling more confused than ever, about her future, her family, and her own tangled heart. But when Holden appeared, her mood lightened. Their connection deepened during this trip, and she realized that life was too short for regrets. Before leaving town, Claire wanted to stop by the shadow room to thank Sienna. That's when she met Mitch. The moment Mitch and Holden laid eyes on each other, the air grew tense. There was history there, unspoken and bitter. Claire sensed that whatever happened between Mitch and Audra in the past wasn't something anyone wanted to revisit. As they left, Mitch turned to Sienna with a cold glare. "You seem awfully nervous around that girl," he said softly. "It's not like you were best friends or anything. Why all the guilt?" Sienna stammered, insisting she was just tired, but his eyes told her he didn't believe a word. Nick confronts Mitch. Later that night, Nick showed up at the shadow room unannounced. He wanted answers. Mitch greeted him with that same polished smirk, playing the part of the innocent businessman. "Nick," Mitch said smoothly. "I heard about your son. Terrible accident." "Cut the act," Nick shot back. "I know who you are, Matt. I don't care what name you're hiding behind now." For a moment, Mitch's mask slipped, just a flicker of anger before the smile returned. "I think you've been watching too many crime dramas," he sneered. "I'm not this Matt Clark you keep raving about." But Nick wasn't convinced. "You hurt my son," he said, stepping closer. "And I'm going to prove it." The truth closing in. Behind the scenes, Victoria and Victor began investigating Mitch's background. What they found was alarming: falsified records, shell companies, and an erased history that screamed identity cover-up. The walls were closing in. Sienna, terrified and guilt-ridden, finally reached her breaking point. She went to Sharon in tears, confessing that she and Noah had been involved, but she swore she never meant for anyone to get hurt. "Mitch knows," she whispered. "He always knows. And if he really is Matt Clark, then God help us all." Sharon's expression hardened. "Then we end this, once and for all." Noah's memory returns. Days later, as Noah recovered, pieces of the crash began to come back. "There was a car," he said quietly to his mother. "Black SUV. It followed me from the club. The lights flashed once, then it rammed me." Nick's worst fears were confirmed. Mitch hadn't just been toying with them, he had tried to kill Noah. The calm before the next storm. Back at the shadow room, Mitch poured himself a drink, smirking as he gazed out over the LA skyline. "Some people never learn," he murmured. "You hurt me, you pay the price." Unbeknownst to him, Nick was already on his way, with proof, with rage, and with years of pent-up fury. Sienna, trembling in the corner of the room, finally realized what she had done, and what she was dealing with. Mitch Bacall wasn't just her husband. He was a monster wearing a new face. As Noah slowly regained strength and memories, the question hung in the air like a ticking bomb: would Mitch strike again before his secrets were exposed? Noah Newman's awakening should have been a moment of pure relief, a miracle after weeks of fear and uncertainty, but instead, it was the spark that set off an even bigger storm. The truth about the canyon crash was only beginning to emerge, and every revelation pointed closer and closer to Mitch Bacall, or rather, to the man once known as Matt Clark. The tension builds, Nick's growing obsession. Nick Newman couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw his son's mangled car, the wreckage glinting under the flashing red lights of emergency vehicles. He saw Sharon's face streaked with tears, Sienna's pale trembling lips, and Mitch's too perfect calm. Nick knew that look, the arrogance of a man who thought he'd won. It was the same look Matt Clark wore the last time Nick saw him all those years ago. Nick's gut screamed that Mitch Bacall wasn't just a new face in town, he was a ghost from his past, the very one who had almost destroyed his life and Sharon's. Mitch might have changed his name, his voice, and even his face, but Nick could still recognize that cold, calculating cruelty underneath. So Nick made it his mission to unmask him. He called in favors, hired private investigators, and sent his father Victor Newman a confidential report outlining every inconsistency in Mitch's history, the falsified documents, the vanished records from his supposed European ventures, and the strange timeline gaps that didn't add up.